How do you maintain your life's priorities with all of the important medical information you know and the terrible medical advice out there? I am seriously ill, and most of my productive hours are spent on doing doctor's jobs for the sake of myself and my family. Thankfully, my efforts do make a huge difference. I've drastically improved my own health this year. Also, I recently helped stop my brother-in-law from taking an SSRI. I'm trying to protect my grandparents from the 4th dose, and the list goes on and on. For now, it feels like a necessary sacrifice, but I want to pursue my own actual life goals. Do you have any advice? Love you guys.
A little, but it sounds like you don't need it because you already know it. You can make an absolutely gargantuan difference in your own health if you can get good at simply recognizing patterns, testing hypotheses, and being honest with yourself about the results of your experiments. The medical system is radically broken. If you do what I just described, you can spot the people who are exceptions. When you meet a doctor who isn't nuts, then the work that you do, well, first of all, keep them.
Yeah.
But you can, the work that you do to discover your own patterns will then dovetail with what that doctor understands, and they can facilitate your continuing to improve your own health. Yeah. So anyway, you've obviously figured this out. The last thing I'll say is I recently had a doctor's appointment for the first time in a very, very long time. And I went to a medical...
Well, you've been seeing this wonderful osteopath that we have for things downstream of, for instance, your bike accident. But it's so different from a standard allopathic doctor's appointment that you didn't need. Like, you've seen him 3 or 4 times since your bike accident.
He's fantastic.
But those are like hour-long appointments. They're hands-on. That he's actually doing physical manipulation.
He's a DO, not an MD.
Yeah.
Anyway, that however you say this, that is the distinction.
So you went to an allopathic doctor's appointment recently for the first time in a very long time.
I did.
Yeah.
And actually, I quite liked the doctor. But the experience on the medical campus was one of watching people self-diagnose with mass psychosis or mass formation. The number of people walking between buildings wearing masks, cloth masks, which we know don't work, right, was staggeringly high, right? The fact that you are required...
And this is when it's like 96 degrees out.
Right. Yeah. The fact that you are required to wear these things inside the doctor's office, right?
That's from the state. I mean, I'm not saying, but like the medical campus doesn't have any say. But
right. Yeah. But the point is, the campuses did not rebel against that. Say, hey, wait a minute. Why are you?
They lose. I've been like PT, everyone who's anywhere adjacent to medical, we will get shut down by the state if we don't make you put on a mask.
That is my point.
Yeah.
The point is, you have an entire medical establishment that has gone along with not even a religion. It's a cult. Okay. It's a government cult. Mm-hmm. And that government cult, having gotten all of these medical professionals to sign on to a signaling protocol, it undermines everything that might exist in that relationship, that you are walking into a cult office every bit as much as you are walking into a medical office, and a government motivated cult is a bizarre fact, and it tells us a lot about where we are medically.
Yeah. I will say, and there's been some chat here about this, that the question, really is about how do you let it go when it's someone else, right? Like when it's your brother or a friend or something who's just, dropped into a conversation that they're about to be on such and such a drug, or they're going for their booster or whatever it is. Like, how much do you devote yourself to that, and to what degree is it possible to set boundaries and then not just constantly second guessing your own boundaries because you feel like, what do my life goals matter if I could help this person not poison themselves, right? And this is a very real and difficult problem for everyone who is awake, who is seeing things that the vast majority of people aren't seeing, and can say to them when either when they do choose to come, as happens, or even harder when you see them about to make a decision and you know that they actually don't want to hear what you have to say. Like how do you set boundaries?
I think this goes back to that earlier question, the one about the model for awaking the mind. Who was that? I can't scroll back.
I don't know. I don't know what the question looked like.
The Ian McGill-Christ, Matthias Bezmenov.
Gary.
Okay.
Well, there were 3 questions. With Bezmenov was L, McFarland, Gary, and then Gordon.
Okay. I think it was the Gordon portion of it, is suggesting a mechanism for emphasizing relationship over analytics. And I do think that this is something we're all going to have to practice. It's not something that's intuitive, but I find that saying something like, at the risk of creating tension in a relationship that I highly value, I wouldn't do what you're about to do if I were in your shoes. Right? If you say that, you're not saying you shouldn't do that. You're saying, in your shoes, I wouldn't do that.
Yep.
And that means, well, what is it that you know that if they were standing in my shoes would cause me to rethink?
Yeah.
Will it work? Not every time. And that's the problem.
Not every time. And yeah, as someone here has said, offering it into the relationship and then, and then being willing to walk away, to let it go, which it's impossible to fully let it go because you cared enough to say something in the first place. But, I've heard you say to people that we know we care about what we barely know, very strongly. Things like, I don't know what your status is, but I hear you wrestling with what to do with your children. Don't let that shit near your children. Right. And so that, there's a place that, there's some demarcations around which, I also become more willing to talk to other people when they don't seem willing, when it's about their children.
Well,
right.
And that it's clearer for 2 reasons.
Right.
One, they're children. If your child was about to step into the street and you weren't paying attention, I would step in and prevent your child from getting hit, right? Yeah. I believe that we have certain liberties with respect to protecting each other's children, even if a well-meaning parent is is making an error. And I guess I'm now kind of lost the second reason that it's distinct, but
well, the risks and benefits of children are just in the to the degree that an 85-year-old could be argued to be a benefit for this particular treatment for this particular disease. It goes in exactly the opposite direction for a 5-year-old.
Yeah, that's the second reason, is that it's not a judgment call. It's actually, you've been misled. If you're going to inject your child with this thing that has serious potential downsides for no good reason, then you've misunderstood the evidence.
Yeah, but that you've misunderstood the evidence, that won't likely make the difference.
No, but from the
precisely
point of view,
the mass formation, Bezmenov kind of thinking that we've already talked about.
Yeah, I guess the question is, well, why are you being nosy? And the answer is, here's why I'm being nosy, because this is way clearer than you apparently understand. And I wish I didn't have to say that to you, but it's so clear that you must have absorbed a wrong idea somewhere, or you wouldn't do that.
Well, but here, Chop, there's also the information fallacy that someone else, when presented with the same information that you have, would draw the same conclusion that you do. That's quite an assumptive leap, and I do think this is precisely the problem that scientists often have. And so, part of what we're seeing among, for instance, the COVID dissidents who are scientists or medical researchers, is that most of us, and I think this is a place where we have an advantage, because we spent so many years as educators learning how to talk to people and recognizing that actually just providing the information often isn't sufficient, right? And whereas doctors are used to be accustomed to having patients come in and having them say like, oh, this is the thing, and then having the patients go, oh, okay. But if you're a dissident doctor right now who is saying things that are exactly the opposite of what the CDC and the WHO and the Faucis of the world are saying, then the world is responding to you in exactly the opposite way. And you may really have no experience in figuring out how how to do this with metaphor, with narrative, with care, with whatever it takes to wake people up.
So I want to address the CHOP citizen point.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue, in my own schema, I would argue that the thing that causes two people faced with the same logical sequence, if it is sufficiently clear what it means, if you have enough evidence to know what it implies, might reach different conclusions, that everything that causes you to reach different conclusions comes down to different values.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, in the case of a parent who would vaccinate a child, in spite of the fact that there is risk to children and there is very little benefit from the point of view of protecting children from COVID
vaccination.
Yep. That the thing to say is the only justification for doing that is to accept harm or potential harm to your children in order to protect other people. And I don't know of a decent society that has ever done that. And the point of my saying that, and you've heard me say it many times on the podcast, the point of saying that is that I want people to understand that you've been presented a picture. It's the right thing to do for your child. It's the right thing to do for the community. No, it's the wrong thing to do for your child. And the community thing is highly debatable, and you're going to do it anyway. And so the idea, are you the kind of parent who will harm your child for elderly or infirm strangers? Do you know that you're that kind of parent? Or are you being lured into this by the blurring of that distinction? In which case, now is the moment to bring that to consciousness for you to go, oh my God, why would they tell me to do that? We never had that conversation.
Yeah. Check this out. What Jade says. It's strange, though. My boyfriend doesn't question doctors except when it comes to shots. My dad thinks Oklahoma City was an inside job, and he's on his third dose. I feel like some of what has been staggering to me with COVID is, you coined the term medically woke. How many people are anti-woke 1.0 and fucking all in, so medically woke and so certain that those of us who actually have the interest in and capacity to assess the information coming out about this are, loony conspiracy theorists on the basis of no information that they have.
It's
so that this is like the inverse. Not even. I mean, this is that. I don't happen to know. I don't think anyone who thinks Oklahoma City was an inside job, but it's that sort of like, oh yeah, I'm willing to see truth behind things in lots of places, but not this one.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It's unmistakable evidence of certain heuristics.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the thing about the anti-vaxxer accusation is that so many of us had filed anti-vaxxers as dangerously off base.
Yeah.
Right? The point is, not only are you people off base, but you're putting other people in jeopardy. Right? So that the existence of that category
because herd immunity is a thing.
Right. So the existence of that category causes many, many people to say, look, okay, maybe the vaccines are 50 times more dangerous than I think. That's still not very dangerous. No. Right?
Still not worth me getting anywhere close to that label.
Right. So I'm just going to take it. And so the point is, no, they may be way more dangerous than that. And at some point, you don't have a threshold in your heuristic that says, there is a level of danger at which point I ought to risk being accused of being an anti-vaxxer.
Well, that's part of why. So my neologism, tradvaxxer. But also, I feel like one way at this particular piece is to, and JJ Couey actually is on about this, and I felt like it was the wrong approach for a long time, and I think it's some places the wrong approach. But like, how did they, whoever they are in this case, but it's like CDC and WHO and Fauci and all of this, manage to get this thing called a fucking vaccine?
Yeah.
So you're only an anti-vaxxer by rejecting this thing if this is a vaccine. And you're still not an anti-vaxxer because you're just rejecting one particular instantiation. But so rejecting one particular instantiation of a category does not make you a rejecter of the category. Point one, wait. But point two, if this thing doesn't belong in that category at all, if this thing isn't a member of the category, then you can't, like, if it's not a vaccine at all, then you're not an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah, I think, I have not seen it before. I think it's an excellent, excellent point. It is a dimension of this vaccine. I've been, as you know, slow to embrace the idea that the distinction in terminology is where we ought to focus.
Right. Yes. So have I. Yes.
But I do agree that part of the point was that the weapon that has gotten so many people to sign on to this is called anti-vaxxer.
Right.
And so if these things weren't vaccines, if they were treatments, if they were shots, then the point is, oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. No, I'm against this shot. I'm against this inoculation.
Right.
I'm against transfection.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If it was anything other than a vaccine,
Yeah.
then the ready-made weapon wouldn't have worked.
I don't take anything that comes with a needle. I don't stick out my arm for any needle
Right.
that comes
I'm against
along.
Tattoos.
I've never shot up heroin.
Right.
So, right? Like,
That's good.
I mean, there's a lot of things that come in needles that you've already rejected.
I like that. No, I can imagine. Yeah. Here's some heroin. Let's find a vein. No, I don't do that sort of thing. Oh, you anti-vaxxer. Yeah, that's the stuff right there.
Hey guys, that was a clip from our monthly private Q&A that you can get access to at my Heather Hyings Patreon. And you can also get access there to all of the past paid subscriber content. So please consider joining us there.
Did you mention that these private Q&As are the key to living a better life and living to tell the tale?
I forgot to do that. These private Q&As are in fact the key to living a better life and what?
Living to tell the tale.
Living to tell the tale. Go ahead, live to tell the tale. Join us there.
See ya.